I've known my next guest for, what, 20 years. We used to present a TV show together called Friendly Fire, which was an ironic title. It wasn't actually very friendly, but that was then, and this is now. I admire Irshad Manji as one of the most compelling and complete voices in modern political writing. Her new book is called Allah, Liberty and Love. And how are you, darling?
20 years older, and you're looking better than ever.
Oh, yeah. You know, I remember...
Great to be here.
Oh, thank you. This was years ago, and we hadn't seen each other in a while after doing that show, and you came up to me, and you said, you know what, Michael, I think we've both done a lot of growing up, and you hugged me, and that was completely true. And anyway, it's a pleasure to see you.
Well, the pleasure is mine.
It really is. Now, the first book was extraordinary. This one, I mean, even the title, Allah, Liberty and Love, that's going to offend a lot of Muslims, you know.
Because of the love piece and the liberty piece?
Well, particularly Allah and love in the same sentence. I mean, I don't think that's a contradiction, but they might feel it's being, if not blasphemous, flippant.
I have to tell you that the voices that people will read in Allah, Liberty and Love, the Muslim voices are really from a younger generation for whom love is not only, you know, acceptable, it's desirable. You know, Michael, I was in Cairo in May 2005 at what was then the biggest protest against government authoritarianism. And afterwards, I hung out with a bunch of democracy activists at a Cairo cafe. I'll never forget this one woman who came up to me and said, she recalled me from my TV interviews internationally, and she said, Irshad, I need to ask you for some advice. I have fallen in love with a Jewish man. I don't believe he needs to convert to Islam in order to be my love, but I don't know how to tell my parents. And we discussed it further, and she pointed out the irony that here she is putting her life on the line, literally, to effect political change in Egypt, but the more intimidating prospect is to speak to her own elders about love.
But in Egypt, where did she meet? It must have been outside of Egypt. You couldn't meet a Jewish guy in Egypt. There aren't any Jews in Egypt anymore.
There are a few, and he was a grad student at one of the universities.
But we saw what was known as the Arab Spring, but now in Egypt we have the Muslim Brotherhood very powerful. We have groups to the right, if you like, more extreme, who are also very influential. We saw the storming of the Israeli embassy. I realize anti-Zionism, anti-Semitism are not the same thing, but there's a lot of anti-Jewish feeling in Egypt. Is it really any better now?
Well, here's my belief about it all, Michael, and you know your history, and you know American revolutionary history. I mean, after the American Revolution, there was still the so-called original sin of slavery, and you know it took 100 years to get past that, and then beyond that, you know, segregation between whites and blacks. So democracy really is a process, and if we're going to accord the United States 200+ years to kind of reach this dysfunctional point, maybe we need to do the same, you know, for Arab countries. But the other thing I'll quickly say about this is the reason I think this is a big step forward, the Arab Spring, regardless of who wins the next elections and whether those elections are clean, is that I really believe that the Arab world is on now the precipice of realizing that the time for conspiracy theories are over. That now they've got choices, and that they're going to have to own those choices. So they can't keep pointing fingers at everybody else and saying, all of our ailments are because of you. There will be now, you know, the need, and I think the challenge, obviously, of introspection.
Let's talk about Islam itself. Christianity, if you like, came of age when it accepted, encouraged, drank in pluralism. There are some Christians who've rejected it, but for the most part, overwhelmingly, Christianity is pluralism. Yes, we coexist. This is a good thing. That doesn't happen in the Islamic world very often. It was happening in Turkey. They're now going the other way. There are problems in Indonesia and Malaysia. And, of course, then we have Iran and the Arab world. Are you, as a Muslim, are you encouraged by that?
Oh, obviously not encouraged by the problems you've just pointed out, but what I am encouraged by are the likes of the young woman who has fallen in love with a Jew and now actually wants to do something with it.
How common is that?
It's actually, believe it or not, and I'm no exaggeration, the first chapter of Allah, Liberty and Love, a huge chunk of it is devoted to the phenomenon, because it really has become a phenomenon, of interfaith marriage within Islam. You see, this is an era of mass migration in which we all live. There are Muslims who are either being born in the West or migrating to the West for jobs and so forth. And they're encountering people who are not Muslim and falling in love with those people. And when I started getting, you know, questions like, what do I do? Do I need to give up the love of my life in order to retain my faith? I started giving them my own interpretation, very pluralistic of interpretation of the Quran. But then when I got like the 16th or 17th question like this in a very short period of time, I realized, wow, this is a bigger issue than even I had given it credit for. So I went to a liberal imam in the United States and asked him to exercise Islam's own tradition of independent thinking, ijtihad, and to reinterpret the very verses of the Quran that have traditionally been used to prohibit interfaith marriage, particularly for women. Here's the finishing flourish of the story. He comes up with a very concise defense of interfaith marriage from a Quranic perspective. I posted in English on my website, and in only 6 months' time, it becomes such a popular download that I have to get it translated into 20 more languages, including most of the European languages where, again, so many young Muslims are. So I see this as a real issue that gives me hope. To my mind, interfaith marriage within Islam, by the way, is a great integration strategy as well.
See, I have no problem with a parent saying, I would like my child to marry someone who is Jewish, who is Catholic. I'll be personal. As a Catholic, in a perfect world, my kids would fall in love with wonderful, beautiful, intelligent Catholics, because it might be a challenge if they didn't. However, they do what they do. They have their freedom. We're civilized people. That, for me, isn't the issue. The issue is the child saying, I'm not going to marry someone of the same faith, and our reaction is to hate you, or to even kill you.
Right.
And this is
exactly right. And true to that, true to what you've just pointed out, I remember in 2007, I was giving a lecture in Berlin, Germany. And afterwards, after all of the TV cameras left and radio microphones and audience, you know, filed out, a group of young Muslim women living in Berlin came up to me and said, thank you so much for posting the interfaith marriage blessing, because we are now at marrying age. They were in their 20s, and my parents, our parents, are trying to pawn us off to Muslim men we don't even know, much less love. And one of them said to me, and this breaks my heart, but that's why this work has to be done, she said, my mother even threatened to kill me if I didn't marry a Muslim man. And so the whole sort of phenomenon and tribal custom, really, of group honor is alive and well in many Muslim communities in the West. This is by no means an isolated incident. And yet, precisely because I speak from within the faith of Islam, for all of my foibles, younger members are gravitating, members of Islam are gravitating towards these ideas. And I'm happy to provide them with tips. Put the interfaith marriage blessing in front of your parents. It's written by an imam, so they can't blame it on Irshad Manji. And moreover, since it's translated, in this case for the German women, in Turkish, Arabic, and German, your parents have no linguistic excuse to say they don't
Marriage
understand.
tips with Irshad Manji.
That's right.
Can you stay with us for another segment?
I absolutely will.
Marvelous. Thank you. Welcome back to Here's the book, Allah, Liberty and Love, published by, you've got a Random House. This is important. I'm trying to look at the price. $29.95 Canadian. Probably get it cheaper on Amazon.
Yes,
and Irshad Manji is the author. I want to just very briefly speak to you about Saudi Arabia. Have you been following these ads? Now, we've been I'm so proud of this station. Yes. Whatever you want to advertise within the law, you should be able to. And all the ad says is clean and dirty oil. The Saudis produce a lot of oil, and the country is a dictatorship. Right. And of course, they've brought in their legal influence and pressure, and some people have simply caved in CTV, but we haven't. Yes. Doesn't surprise me at all.
That CTV has caved in?
And the Saudis would do this.
Oh, yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me either. It saddens me to no end that a major Canadian news station would cave, and one hopes that the legal team will wake up and turn that around, turn that decision around, though I don't expect it. But, you know, I've watched the ads. There is absolutely nothing inflammatory. It tells the truth. And by the way, ethical oil, you're damn right. You know, I don't understand, Michael, and I live in New York City now, so I speak with Americans all the time. I truly do not understand, even in terms of costs, why they are not importing more of their oil from Canada than from Saudi Arabia. And your viewers know we don't have to go into detail about the causal relationship between petrodollars and, you know, the sustaining the dictatorship and sheer oppression, not just of women, but of religious minorities, and really anybody who doesn't conform to, you know, Wahhabism. It's ethical oil, baby, all the way.
You're going to be popular here.
Yeah.
Being a Muslim, Whenever I have a liberal Muslim, if you like, I don't know if the term is erroneous or not, someone on the show, I say, what does it mean to you to be a Muslim? And I have to be quite candid with you here.
Sure.
There are Catholics out there who don't believe in God, they don't believe in the Trinity, in Christ, in the church, and call themselves Catholic. And my reaction is, no, you're not. You might call yourself, but you're not. You're simply not. Are you a Muslim?
I believe I am. The premise of Islam is that it is the monotheism that emphasizes the mono in theism. That is to say that we are, as Muslims, to believe in one God and one God alone, not in God's self-appointed ambassadors. And the beauty is, and this is where liberty and love comes in, that if I believe, as I do, that God has the full and final truth, then that means I have to respect the fact, accept the fact that I don't, neither do you, and neither does anybody watching us tonight, which in turn means, Michael, that it is a spiritual duty to contribute to societies in which we can legitimately disagree with one another in peace and with civility, because anything less means that we're playing God with one another, and that is the real sin in Islam.
Do you believe?
So belief in one God obliges me, quite happily I might add, to defend human liberty.
But belief in one God would also include Christians and Jews. Do you believe Muhammad was the final prophet of God?
No, I don't actually. And
is that not essential to Islamic belief?
Well, it's essential to the belief of some Muslims, but the Quran itself doesn't make that claim. And moreover, the Quran expressly states in chapter 3, verse 7, if anybody's looking this up, that some of these passages will be ambiguous and some of them will be precise. But it's only those with disbelief in their hearts who pounce on the ambiguous verses in order to decree interpretations. Know that your Lord knows the full and final truth of all of these passages. In other words, that's a reminder to us about the need for humility.
How mainstream does that make you within the Islamic world?
Oh, I'm not mainstream at all. And again, I don't mind that. In fact, you study the history of innovation, whether it's in business or whether it's in culture, change comes from the periphery. You know, when Martin Luther King Jr., just to give a really highfalutin example, wrote the letter from a Birmingham jail, he actually devoted a section in it castigating what he called moderate Christians. And those moderate Christians, he said, were so tepid and so timid about taking on segregation that's being done in the name of Christianity that he found them not just useless, he found them to be contributing to the very problem. Was he mainstream? No, he wasn't. But today, we have, for whatever you might think of him, and I don't think much of him, an African-American president in the United States. So the point is that though cultural change will always come from the periphery, it can, in fact, happen.
By the way, what do I think of him? I think it is a wonderful, wonderful thing that we have an African-American president. I just wish it was a different one.
Fair enough.
Islam, though, what you've described, and I'm not an Islamic scholar, but you've described charity, really. A vague monotheistic charity, niceness, North American communal feeling. If that's all Islam is, why not be a Christian or a Jew?
No, listen, the kind of Islam I'm talking about is one that is vibrant with argumentation, freedom of expression, pluralism of thought. That's not nice. That's not cozy. It is robust.
What is uniquely Islamic about it? What is uniquely Islamic about that?
Let me answer your question, because I'm about to get to it. You asked, well, why not be a Christian? Why not be a Jew?
Yeah.
Because there's no reason to leave Islam when you have this kind of interpretation. I point out very early on in the book, and I'm saying this to Muslims, that, keep in mind, Islam is hardly revolutionary. It is a derivative religion. It comes directly.
I agree.
All of its
What is new in Islam?
Well, it comes directly. All of our cornerstone beliefs come directly from Judaism and Christianity. Therefore, rather than being resentful to non-Muslims, we ought to be grateful, and our integrity as Muslims, therefore, is in the pluralism of thought.
When the Pope repeated a medieval leader, monarch, philosopher, asking the question, what is new about Islam? People were killed. There were mass riots throughout the Islamic world.
Yeah, it's a pretty ignorant reaction, to the Pope's statement, and I was very clear at the time that it was ignorant, and I'm clear today about it, and that's why, Michael, I keep focusing on this beautiful passage in the Quran, chapter 13, verse 11, which states, God does not change the condition of a people until they change what is inside themselves.
Right.
This, my friend, is a 1311 kind of solution to a 9/11 kind of abomination.
Last question. The one Jewish state is, for all its faults, democratic and pluralistic. The Christian world, at least at this time in its evolution, seems to embrace other cultures. Yeah. The Islamic world has existed now for, what, 700-800 years. There aren't many countries with an Islamic majority where you'd say, I would like to live there because I will be so free.
Right.
Why? Why is Islam doing so badly in terms of liberty?
Culture. Arab tribal culture.
What about Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, the non-Arab countries?
These places have been Arabized.
Okay.
And tribal culture directly from the Arabian Peninsula is such that it focuses on group solidarity, unity in the guise, uniformity in the guise of unity. Group solidarity instead of individual freedom. But culture is not the same as religion. And when people read Allah, Liberty and Love, they will see those passages in the Quran that are so freedom friendly that they scare both the extremists and the moderates. And that's why this group of people, the moderates, are just as big of a problem, like MLK said about Christian moderates, are as big of a problem as the Islamists are. And it's group solidarity that prevents them from saying to somebody as thoughtful as you, yep, we Muslims have a problem, and according to the Quran, we must implement the solution for ourselves.
As always, Irshad Manji, a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
God bless you.
Thank you.